Well, it started late 55 or early 56. We were singing spirituals. The name of the group at that time was the Gospel Tornadoes. And we decided that we would try and do some of the music that was currently popular, secular music that was currently popular, and made Get a Job.
Get a Job. Now, I was but a lad when Get a Job hit the charts, but I remember it well, and while I couldn't really, at that age, come to grips with what a recession was, you could certainly get a sense for what was going on. What motivated you to write Get a Job, and what was going on at that time?
Well, this is a universal theme. I mean, every kid when he graduates from high school, if he's not going on to college, his mom and his pop have something to say to him. And usually it is, when are you going to find a job? Well, that I had that experience also. And basically that's how the song came to be.
And times were hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was a bit of a recession in the
Yeah.
late 50s. Were you surprised when it skyrocketed to the top of the charts as quickly as it did?
Yes, we were. I wasn't. I was working in Jersey, and all of a sudden, one evening, Rick, Bill, and then came and picked me up in the car and said, "Let's go." I said, "Go where?" He said, "The song was finally made a hit."
Is that right?
Yeah.
And what was your instant reaction?
I left.
Well, you came out with a new album in 1982. To what would any of you attribute the success of the doo-wop sound?
Well, I think that people who listen to this music would like to understand what it is that's being said. And the music at that time, 82 you spoke about, I mean, there was very, very little lyric content. And I think that people just went back and grasped something that they understood and had some meaning for them.
What do you think of today's music in general? You can be as brutally realistic as you want or as flattering as you want, but what's your sense? As musicians, how do you feel about today's music?
Well, I would say I'm not a musician because I can't play an instrument. My instrument is singing, it's sound. But as far as I'm concerned, today's music doesn't compare at all with the music of the late 40s or the 50s or the 60s, because the current sound today, the blues sound today, is I really can't understand it. I can't understand most of the lyrics, as a matter of fact.
Are you saying it hasn't got the same soul? You want that old time rock?
It's too mechanical, I think.
Well, I have differed with him. I have to like this music today because it's so successful. I can remember when we went out there with a #1 record, and Christ, we could all eat and sleep out there with the money they paid us, and now they go out there now a week. My God, the money they made is astronomical.
How tough was it in the early years when you were, after Get a Job hit the charts, for example, and you were continuing to work? How tough was it to make a living in those days?
Well, I think you just spoke about that.
It
You really can't make a living if you're not making money. Today they are making money.
So you think that's a large part of
Oh, certainly.
the reason for the popularity of it?
Well, you have to understand that at that time, and I'm sure you're in this industry, and I mean, there are many, many historians who have chronicled what had happened at that time. And one of the major problems were that most of the artists from that time were not astute enough to make contracts with these people that made it so that they would be compensated for what they did. In other words, I feel that they were used, most of the artists from that time. And I even feel that based on those agreements that were made back with those record companies, some independents and some majors, even today, the artists that are still around cannot even make claims or collect royalties that are due them because of the types of agreements that they were not coerced into doing them or anything like that, but it was basically because they were not wise in the ways of business.
How important is it to have a real good business manager for a group today as compared to in the late 50s and 60s?
Well, you could not be in the music industry today unless you had a plethora of accountants, lawyers. You have to have. Back then, what you had was a record company executive who usually was your manager, who handled your business for you, and had a vested interest in ripping you off.
Well, gentlemen of the Silhouettes, Billy Horton, Richard Lewis, Raymond Edwards, and Earl Beal, I want to thank you very, very much for joining us today in our studios and for sharing with us some of your great music.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I gave my heart to you, the one that I trusted. You brought it back to me, better than understand. And I sold my heart to the Junkman, and I'll never fall in love again. I gave my heart to you. I thought you could use that. You brought it back to me, battered and bruised, and I sold my heart to the Junkman, and I'll never fall in love again. A melodrama and a simple manner, love played a leading part. Oh, we had such a happy ending, but we learned with the road and oh, Lord, I gave my heart to you. You could use that. You brought it back to me, battered and bruised, and I sold my heart to the Junkman, and I'll never fall in love again. Okay, get a job?
Hold on one. Okay, we're ready in air.
Okay.
Dip, 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 dip.
Sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da, dip, 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 dip.
Get a job.
Sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da. Every morning about the sun, get me out of bed and find a job. Sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da. And after breakfast every day she told the one who got my way and never failed to say,
Get a job.
sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da, dip, 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 dip.
Get a job.
Sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da. Well, when I get the paper, I'll read it through, and my girl never fails to say, if there is any work for me. Oh, then I go back to the house, I hear the woman's mouth, preaching and crying, tell me that I'm lying about a job
That I never could find.
Sha-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la-la,
What is?
sha-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la-la,
What is?
sha-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la-la,
What is?
sha-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la-la, dip, 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 dip.
Get get a job.
Sha-la-la-da, sha-la-la-da-da-da, sha-la-la-da, sha-la-la-da-da-da,
Ball-do.
sha-la-la-da, sha-la-la-da-da-da,
Ball.
sha-la-la-da, sha-la-la-da-da-da,
Ball-do.
sha-la-la-da, sha-la-la-da-da, sha-la-la-da,